Hey, so again, don't send me any stars. I kind of come to a realization where I can articulate something I wanted to be able to share with you all, and that is what I've just called the illness of I am, right? So this idea stems from the beginnings of what we call and tote with big horns shouting from the past into the future. This is what civilization begins to look like. We've got a few of these horns that we tote and toot about our society. One of them, of course, is Mr. Descartes, René Descartes, who is quoted as saying, in another language, not in English, I think, therefore I am. There's an issue with that. There's a very big issue with that. And that is what we're talking about here. So this stems from a dream that I had. I'm not going to go into the details about the dream because I don't really think it's suitable for the contents of general Facebook. But in this dream that I had, it became really obvious to me that in this place or location where I was flying around and playing around in this dream, dreamscapes are either well-formed structures in what we refer to as time-space or temporary arrangements of positions in time-space for the purpose of whatever that purpose is. So I was curious as to whether or not this was going on in some place or whether or not it was something that was going on inside my own head, and I was playing with myself like a lot of dreams are, where we construct external things in order to be able to interact with them rather than dealing with the internal aspects, and then we can point the finger and blame them quite comfortably without the soreness of attachment. In this dream, there were entities as in people, being broadcast to over a frequency band that everybody was experiencing. And this broadcast was quite simply basically telling them to kill themselves in a much more succinct way. It wasn't sitting there going, kill yourself or anything like that. People would have noticed, right? But there was environmental circumstances to this dream that enabled people to be able to, without being aware of it, follow their own thoughts into what resulted in their destruction or termination. It wasn't a very friendly place. But the takeaway from it was that there are these, in the dream, there was these broadcasters that were sending out over frequency bandwidths contents of thought that were being picked up by these things that we call our minds, which are much more usually considered to be a radio receiver, as your pineal gland, pituitary gland, and the visual cortex of your brain by some respected scientists is actually referred to as a transducer, which is a piece of technology, biological or artificial in structure, plastic and metal and wood, that takes a frequency and converts it into a visual image. And that's where we get the difference between the electronic patterns of our thoughts and the experience of our sensory perception. The frequencies that we are taking in our mind become the projected or transduced experience that we call our visual world. And then we mistake that for being a direct copy or a direct representation instead of a self-perception of these frequencies. Complicated stuff over. What this means is what you think becomes your reality. We know this, and that's a very loaded statement for a lot of different people out there. In fact, there's some people who rile against such a statement. However, if you think about it like this, and you can see the simplicity of the concept, if you're depressed, then your limited amount of information processing, somewhere between, depending upon whether or not you're skilled or trained at your mind capacities, could be anywhere between 3 and 8 bits of information being able to be tossed and turned and retained at any one point in time in what we refer as the conscious mind. You ever wonder why you forget where your keys are? And then all of a sudden they're right in front of your face? Is because your keys have gone from those chunks of priority information that you're gathering in your conscious awareness into the ninth or the 10th or outside of your range of awareness. And so then still being picked up by your senses, except the reticular activation process that goes along the lines of transporting information across the bridge between the subconscious and the conscious experience is then declined by the choice of overloading the self with stress and other factors. Oh, I'm going late. Oh, I'm going to get late. The kids are complaining about lunch and now I'm going to have to deal with a boss that's talking about how I'm 2 minutes late. Like, fuck, man, it's 2 minutes, you know? And then now you can't find your keys because they're gone, right? Because you've pushed them out of your mind into that subconscious position. So when we're talking about our awareness of dealing with positives and negatives, if you're depressed, and I have been previously, I have cured myself of depression and I no longer suffer under the guises of what most people would call depression, but I had a large amount of time. I can't tell you when it started because it was always there, where all I could see was the negative things. No matter where I looked, no matter how I looked at something, even if it was something good, what most people would consider good, I could see negative about it. But that was because I was requesting that. I was stating to the world, by my own choice of lack of responsibility and taking action and awareness of myself, I was ascribing my power to this frequency band, which I identified with as I am depressed. I am, as in I'm making my reality in this frequency bandwidth here, and depressed just so happens to be a very low frequency bandwidth in the world of mind. You can check out Richard Dawkins, Dr. PhD dude, who did a lot of muscle testing around the different frequencies around human experience. But depression and other things of disempowerment are obviously right down the lower end of our frequency bandwidth of experience. And so by stating I am depressed, I'm stating I choose to make a reality that is within this frequency bandwidth. And then that gets loaded into my mind. And then my mind goes, well, let's see, what do we got around here that's depressive in that frequency? Oh, here's one for you. And oh, here's another one. And oh, here's another one. And all of a sudden, all I can see is negative things because my mind is going, this is what you want. Here you go. You wanted it. Ha! Are you happy now? Because I'm giving you what you want. And I'm going, oh, I'm so depressed. I just wish I could die. I wanted to commit suicide at one point. I was so miserable. I couldn't see the purpose of anything. I couldn't see any positivity about reality in any capacity. Until I decided to change that frequency bandwidth, into which then I started to see things that were in alignment with that frequency that I chose to identify with. And this took me a while before I figured out exactly what I was doing. And it's only just now where I can articulate this to the point. But I went from being a child to a teenager to a young adult. I went in and out of a couple of churches. I went in and out of alcoholism, other drugs, other identification issues, trying to find where I could exist, trying to sacrifice myself because I didn't want myself for other people, because that's what Jesus would do. You know, and all these other bits and pieces like this that I chose to be I am. And because I chose those to be I am, my mind is going, excellent, I know what to do with that. Here's the frequencies. And then my story built up around that was, all I can see is bad things. So there's no point to anything. It doesn't make me any joy anymore. There's no reason for this and all the rest of it. These are the experiences of the I am that I was calling in based on the frequencies that I was using in my identification process of spelling, using my vocal box to call in via my freedom of expression the desired reality that I desired to see from the center of my brain in my experience. Now, what does this mean? Well, I mean, if you're having trouble understanding some of the basic concepts of what we're talking about here, and your mind is not already going, oh shit, go back and start again. But this is where it gets really interesting. You know, after this dream that I mentioned, I woke up and I had a bit of a paranoia moment where I was like, oh my God, now I'm fully crazy because I can't believe the thoughts in my mind. So now I think that I've got these voices inside my head and that they're external to me, and I can't agree with them because they're all fucking wrong. And then I'm sitting there going, yeah, great. That sounds really sane, Trev. Congratulations. You've flown off the handle. But I was in a raised state of stress because of the contents in the dream. Watching people hurt themselves gets under my skin. I don't like seeing people in pain, right? So once I was able to clear that negative energy that I was carrying still from the dream, I was then able to sort of see how I wasn't so crazy, because the very first thing that you learn in esoteric practices, if you follow any of your traditional, more common ones, is through the processes similar, if not the same as meditation, that your thoughts are not you. You are not your thoughts. Meditation is about observing your thoughts, and that's where a lot of people get meditation wrong. They think they need to silence their thoughts. No, you're meant to sit there and observe your thoughts. And the process of that after a certain amount of time is realizing that you're observing your thoughts, right? You've got your thoughts, and then after a while, you're like, oh, I've got my thoughts. And you're like, hang on a minute. What are my thoughts doing over there, and what am I doing over here? And that's when you start getting the realizations of meditation that unlock these parts of your brain. And it's not something that you can do, it's something that happens. And that's why you can't fail at meditation. You're meant to have these voices inside your head. That's what your brain is doing. That's the electrical current. No voices inside your head basically means no electricity inside your brain. But there are some cultures prior to our culture that ascribe human thought as a sense, as opposed to an identity. Ancient Egypt, Sumeria, just a couple off the top of my head, where they had 6 senses to their society, the standard 5 plus 1 more, and that was thought, because they were aware of the fact that you are not your body or your mind in here, your brain, right? The mind is usually referred to as the energetic correlation to the brain. The brain is the physical, grey, mushy part, right? So with the awareness of what we're talking about here, what I'm going to say to you now is very interesting. Frequency-based technology has been in play for a very long time, and all you need to do is go have a look at the US Patent Office for evidence on that. So I'm not going to get into what we're talking about here in specifics, but there are a lot of people out there who are very clued into a lot of this sort of stuff and who are still called conspiracy theorists, despite the fact that there are patented products being sold and used in our society that state that their intended purpose, as their official filing with the US state government authorities, are described as exactly that: frequency mind control technologies. These frequency mind control technologies broadcast a signal. And if you are within a receiving range of that signal, either distance, which is the power of the signal. So if I'm over here and I'm calling out this far and you're all the way over here and you can't hear me, well then you're at the edge of the limitation of that. The other reference to the frequency signal there is not only the distance, but the actual bandwidth itself. So as frequencies come together, they've got 3 different choices. One of them is a dualistic choice. First of all, you've got constructive interference, and then you've got deconstructive interference. So either 2 signals come together and they complement and accentuate one another and amplify one another, or they come together and attack and destabilize one another, or they come together and they pass directly through each other without noticing each other, or they come together with each other and obliterate like as in neutralize each other. Now, neutralizing is different from deconstructive because deconstructive has a destructive component to it where there's a result of that. Whereas both the ones in the middle reference here result in no net effect of experience, right? So if you're in the frequency bandwidth of being depressed and you have a TV in your environment that's broadcasting in the background, do you see? If you're out there having a conversation with somebody and they are a very negative person and you're feeling that negativity land in on you, that's because you're coming down to their frequency band and you're now being impeded by their overly energetic disposition. You're being entrained to a different frequency band, and when you arrive at that frequency band or state of awareness or state of mind, you then can receive other information on that same bandwidth. Now, this is amplified even more so through the awareness of the morphogenic fields, the social memory complexes, the hive mind of our race. And I'm not talking about hive mind as in something negative, okay? I'm talking about you being completely independent from everything and yet still connected to everything, right? That's absolutely apparent. Anybody who refutes anything along those lines still has a fundamental lesson to learn in what reality is, which is one thing. There's absolutely only one thing out there, and that is what we call whatever the fuck you want, because there's no word for it. Every word is a limitation that describes something while not describing something, and that's where you get your Zen Buddhists who say things like it's non-dual, because they're trying to describe something that's dualistically but not dualistic at the same time. But even saying non-dual becomes a dualistic statement, because then you've got dual, non-dual and dual. You see, like every time you use a word, you're establishing a binary understanding of something, because words are a constructive form, and every time you create something, there's a backside to it as well. That's the karmic aspect of things, is this backside or consequence or effect of things that go into play after the intention has taken part. So if you want to experience a higher reality, if you want to cure the illness of your I am, whatever the fuck you are laboring under is your issue, excuse my Australian, is you need to kind of change your daily bread, metaphorically, that you're taking your existence and sustenance from. And when you do that, cogs start to move in different directions, glands start to refire in opposite directions, chemicals get cleared out, fat gets removed, the energetic body and the physical body become more in alignment, creating ease rather than deconstructive interference, or dis-ease as is commonly referred to as. Now, I love you. I am all of everything that I possibly can be, but I make sure that I do so in a direction that stems from the empowerment of humanity and the independence of the individual, as well as the interdependence of each other. The dualistic mindset is not one that you can embody, because if you, like I said, embody one thing, you're not embodying the other thing. So you've got to be able to have this awareness of two things at once, and usually these things are in opposition to one another, without pulling your own hair out going, I can't decide, what do I do? You are whatever you want to be. And you have that capacity inside of yourself. Your ideas and your concepts that you can't do this, that you don't have enough energy, that you don't know how to, these are the frequency bands that you're receiving these thoughts with. Now, this is an illness that humans have labored under and are still laboring under. Hence why it's so powerful and hard to get out of. is because you're running around a burnout track that humanity has burnt out into depths that are really fucking hard to get out of, right? These are well ingrained super freeways of neural pathways that can be downloaded and uploaded into individuals across what we call space-time, time and space. Reality, through unexpected means, commonly referred to as quantum entanglement and transferring of data through quantum reality, spooky action at a distance. And the result of this is your mind constructing reality as you desire it. I'm depressed. And somebody says to you, how about you fix that? And you go, well, I would, but I can't. That's because you're identifying with the I am. I am of this frequency band. So every time somebody goes, well, why don't you want to be a different frequency? You go, well, I would, but I am this frequency band. And so you reinforce your own negative constructs by your identification issue of the illness of I am.